I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about something like this, but I guess life has a way of smacking you in the face when you least expect it. My name's Jake, and I've been married to Lisa for almost 8 years. We met in college, and she was always the sharp-tongued, confident type, beautiful, smart, and a little bit bitchy, but in a way that made her irresistible. We had a good relationship, or at least I thought we did. She'd always been a bit of a handful, tough as nails on the outside but sweet when she wanted to be. Everything seemed normal until about 2 months ago. I started noticing little things that I brushed off at first. Her phone vibrating constantly late at night, her acting just a little more distant. She'd brush it off, say she was busy with work or talking to some girlfriends. But I could tell she was hiding something. Still, I trusted her. I mean, I had no reason not to, right? But suspicion was creeping in, especially when she started canceling plans last minute, saying she was working late or had to stay at her sister. Then, her phone started getting more secretive. She'd hide it when I entered the room, and her texts became more frequent with someone named Chris. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept quiet. Maybe she was just talking to a guy friend about work. Maybe I was paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was off. Still, I didn't have any concrete proof, just gut feelings, those little gut punches telling me I was missing something. That's how I lived in this weird limbo, pretending everything was fine while my mind raced with doubts and questions. And then last weekend happened. I was away on a business trip, something I'd done dozens of times before. Lisa knew I'd be gone for 3 days. She called me the night before I left, acting normal, maybe a little too normal. She was bitchy, as usual, snapping at me about stupid things. How I always left my socks around, how I never listened, that kind of stuff. I thought it was just her usual mood swings. But now, I wonder if it was her trying to cover up something, or maybe just her way of lashing out because she knew I was leaving. The day I left, I kissed her goodbye, and she practically pushed me out the door with a sharp, "Don't forget your charger," like she was annoyed I was even there. Nothing seemed out of place at the time. I was busy with flights and meetings, so I didn't think much about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept thinking about the way she looked at her phone whenever I was around, the way she'd suddenly become more secretive in the days leading up to my trip. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was overthinking it all, just tired from work. But deep inside, I knew better. I knew I wasn't imagining it. I just didn't have proof yet. The first night I was gone, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lisa and that strange, almost aggressive way she'd acted before I left. I kept replaying her words, her expressions, trying to catch something I might have missed. Around midnight, I decided to check her social media, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't snooping out of curiosity. Well, maybe a little, but mostly because I needed to see if there was something I'd missed. What I found hit me like a freight train. Her message history with Chris was right there, open and exposed. They'd been talking for weeks, not just about work or casual stuff. No, what they'd been doing was more explicit. Flirty, then flirtatious, then outright suggestive. There were photos exchanged, her in that tight dress she'd worn to a party last month, him sending a picture of his new car with some cheesy caption about how he needed a hot date. The worst part, they had planned to meet again just this past weekend when she told me she was at her sister's house. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My stomach churned. The betrayal was so raw, so brutal, I almost couldn't believe it. All those months of her telling me she loved me, that I was the only one for her, that our life together was rock solid. It was all a lie. She'd been lying to my face, playing the perfect wife while she was out screwing my best friend behind my back. Her texts were full of dirty talk, promises to meet up, and even some plans for us to go away together, just her and Chris. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, trying to process how I could have been so blind. I'd always thought Lisa was a bitchy, sharp-tongued woman, but I never thought she'd be capable of something this low. The perfect wife, the one I trusted, was actually the biggest liar I'd ever known. I couldn't believe I missed all these signs. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face for months and then apparently plan to cheat on me with my best friend? That was when I realized the depth of the betrayal. This wasn't just about a fling or a one-night stand. This was about her actively lying, sneaking around, and making plans behind my back. I was furious, but I was also hurt, completely crushed. I'd always been loyal, always tried to be a good husband. And she'd been screwing around the whole time, probably laughing at my trusting face. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it over a text or a call. I needed to see her face to face and hear her lie her way out of this mess. The moment I landed back home, I knew I would. That's when everything shifted. I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I already started planning what I was going to do next. The moment I stepped back into the house after that trip, I felt like I was walking into someone else's life. Everything looked the same. Her perfume still lingered in the air, the familiar pictures on the walls, the half-eaten dinner from last night. But I knew better. I knew what I'd uncovered, and it made everything feel wrong, like I was living in a house that was built on a lie. I didn't want to burst in without a plan. I needed to confront her, but I also needed to be smart about it. I didn't want her to deny it outright or, worse, manipulate me into believing she was innocent. So I waited. I stayed quiet for a few hours, trying to calm my nerves, but that only made the anger and hurt settle in deeper. I kept replaying those texts, imagining her lying to my face, trying to dismiss what I now knew was true. When she finally came home, she'd been out shopping. I was already sitting on the couch, arms crossed, staring her down. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, like she thought I was overreacting or maybe just confused. She threw her purse on the table and said, "Well, I see you're back early. How was your trip?" Her tone was casual, almost dismissive. That's when I lost it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. Her face instantly turned pale. She stammered, trying to deny it, insisting she was just talking to Chris, that they were just friends, and that I was reading too much into it. She told me she was stressed, that it was just a stupid flirtation, that she never meant to hurt me. Her words sounded rehearsed, like she'd said this kind of thing 100 times before, but I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I knew everything, about the planned meetups, the dirty talk, the lies. I told her I didn't want to hear any more lies, I wanted the truth. Her reaction was instant. She got defensive, yelled at me, called me paranoid, said I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. Like I was the one at fault here. She even had the nerve to say I was the bitch for accusing her without proof. That's when I realized she was a master manipulator, trying to twist everything around so I'd feel guilty for catching her. I felt like my whole world was collapsing. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had been unfaithful, and she didn't even seem to care. She was more annoyed that I found out than she was about what she did. I'd never been so angry, so betrayed in my life. But beneath that anger was deep pain, pain that I wasn't sure I'd ever fully recover from. I kept asking myself how long she'd been lying, how long she'd been hiding this. And the worst part was knowing I'd probably never be able to trust her again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat there staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. I knew I had two choices: stay and try to forgive, or leave and start over. But right now, I just felt numb, like the betrayal had drained all the hope and trust right out of me. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing for sure: things could never go back to how they were. I just had to figure out whether I wanted to fight for this marriage or walk away. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and endless thoughts. I kept replaying everything: the lies, the sneers, her dismissive attitude, and I kept asking myself how I didn't see it sooner. How blind was I to her bitchy attitude, her coldness, her justifications for everything. I never imagined that the woman I loved could do something so cruel. She always played the victim, made herself out to be the wronged party, and I guess I was naive enough to buy into it. Until now. I started noticing more signs, things I'd overlooked or brushed off before. Her phone kept buzzing even when she was in the shower or in bed, and she'd quickly hide it. She'd get defensive if I tried to look at her messages or her social media. She'd make excuses about needing privacy, but I knew better. The way she'd brush past me with that bitchy smirk, like she was proud of her lies, made me sick. The worst part was seeing how she handled my confrontation. Instead of feeling remorse or guilt, she doubled down in her typical bitchy way. She kept calling me paranoid, accusing me of being untrusting, saying I was the one with the problem for not trusting her. She told me I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat on me, like I was the one losing my mind, not her. That really hit me hard, the way she dismissed everything like I was just some jealous idiot while she was out screwing around with my best friend. It made me feel small, like I was losing my mind because I trusted her for so long. I tried to keep a cool head, but inside I was boiling. Every day I felt more betrayed, more disgusted by the woman I'd married. I kept thinking about the years we'd spent together, the plans we made, the future I'd envisioned, and how all of it was built on her lies. That Saturday, I decided I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I needed to think clearly about what I was going to do. I couldn't stay in this limbo, walking on eggshells, waiting for her next move or another lie. So I started planning my next steps. I wasn't going to confront her again without proof. I wasn't going to fall into her manipulative trap and get played like some pawn. I wanted to make sure I had everything, her secret messages, her plans, everything. I needed to be prepared. If I was going to leave her, I wanted to do it on my own terms with as little damage as possible. If I decided to fight for us, I wanted to do it knowing I had the upper hand. But honestly, deep down, I already knew what I was leaning toward. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. For now, I continued observing her, gathering evidence and trying to keep my cool. Inside, I was a mess, heartbroken, angry, and utterly betrayed. But I also knew that I had to get through this somehow. The truth was out now and there was no going back. The question was, what do I do with it? The next few days were the hardest I've ever gone through. Every time I saw her, I could tell she thought she was still in control, that her bitchy attitude and sharp tongue could somehow cover up what she'd done. She'd throw me those annoyed looks, snap at me over petty things, and act like I was the one overreacting. But I was. I could see right through her, and I knew she was only pretending everything was normal. Every little interaction was like walking on thin ice. I spent hours going over the evidence in my head, trying to figure out my next move. I wasn't going to confront her again until I was ready. I needed to be calm, calculated. I wanted her to think I was still clueless, still trusting, so I could catch her completely off guard, so I played it cool while I kept digging. I found even more messages, some exchanged late at night, some in secret, some just plain dirty. Every new thread confirmed what I already knew. She was cheating on me with Chris, my best friend. For how long, I couldn't say. But the depth of her betrayal was now crystal clear. One night, I decided to test her. I told her I was going out with some friends from work, just to see how she'd react. She rolled her eyes, sneered, and dismissed me like I was bothering her. That bitchy smirk I'd come to recognize so well was there, like she was proud of how she was fooling everyone. I left the house thinking, this is it, no more hiding. I'd gather my courage, face her head on, and get everything out in the open. I wasn't going to let her keep lying, not anymore. The confrontation was brutal. I came home early, caught her off guard. She was on the couch, scrolling her phone, acting like she didn't have a care in the world. I threw the proof in her face, her messages, her plans, her sneaky pictures. Her reaction was classic Lisa: deflect, deny, call me paranoid. She started screaming, calling me crazy for suspecting her, accusing me of invading her privacy. Her words stung. She kept insisting she wasn't cheating, that Chris was just a foolish mistake, and that I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. She called me all kinds of names, told me I was insecure and pathetic, but I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her her game was over. I told her I knew everything, the lies, the sex, the sneaking around. I told her I was done with her bullshit, that I deserved better than a wife who played me for a fool. That's when she really lost it. She started crying and yelling at me, trying to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining our marriage, that she loved me, that she'd never do anything to hurt me, that she was sorry, but her words felt hollow, just empty excuses. I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and heartbreak because I realized I was married to someone who didn't love me enough to stop betraying me. I was angry, yes, but mostly I felt broken inside. I had trusted her for so long, and now that trust was shattered into pieces I didn't know how to put back together. I told her to leave the house, that I needed space. She begged, pleaded, even yelled. Nothing was going to change what she did, and I knew I had to make a decision soon. That night I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. I knew my life was never going to be the same. I'd been betrayed by the one person I thought I could trust, and my best friend was no longer my friend either. I was angry at her, hurt by her lies, and confused about what to do next. But one thing was clear. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to decide whether to fight for this marriage or walk away for good. The only thing I knew for sure was that nothing would ever be the same again. The days after she left were the hardest to get through. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, trying to breathe while everything around me was crumbling. I didn't sleep much, kept replaying everything she said, everything she did, and wondering how I ever trusted her in the first place. It was like I had been blind for years, and now that I saw the truth, I couldn't unsee it. The betrayal cut deep, a betrayal not just of me, but of everything I believed in about us. I moved out of the bedroom, couldn't stand to see her side of the bed anymore. Everything in the house reminded me of what I lost, of the woman I thought I knew. I started packing some of my things, not knowing if I was going to stay or leave for good. Sometimes I'd feel anger just boiling inside, rage at her, at Chris, at my own stupidity for trusting her so completely. Other moments, I'd sink into sadness, feeling like I'd been shattered into a million pieces, wondering if I'd ever find a way to put myself back together. I knew I couldn't stay in that house much longer. Not with her gone and the trust broken beyond repair. I made the decision that I was going to leave, start fresh somewhere new. I didn't want to fight for the marriage anymore. I saw now it was a sinking ship and I had no desire to drown with it. I reached out to a lawyer, started looking into how to file for divorce. I wanted out. I didn't want to be married to a woman who could lie so easily, who could betray me with my best friend. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it destroys. And that's exactly how I felt. Throughout all this, I learned something about myself. I learned that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. I learned that people can surprise you in the worst ways, and sometimes you have to accept that not everyone is who they pretend to be. I learned that sometimes you only find out the truth when everything falls apart. And I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, strong enough to walk away from someone who doesn't deserve me, even if it means facing loneliness and heartbreak. Now, I'm trying to put the pieces back together slowly. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't let her betrayal define me. I won't forget what happened, but I will move forward, cautious and wary, but also hopeful that someday I'll find someone who's honest, loyal, and worthy of my trust. For anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts, protect your heart, and never stay in a situation that makes you feel small or betrayed. Because, in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness is you. And I'm determined to rebuild mine, one step at a time.